Housekeeping.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. Click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you are in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide it to a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items, and times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you are authorizing recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Okay. All right, great. Good morning, everyone. I just noticed we're getting ahead. They're 2 minutes ahead, so we'll give 1 more minute. Okay, it's Jason. Great.
Mike.
And we're looking for, and Jason lives up there. Hi, Mark. Yes.
Hi. In the attendee side, the 714 number, I believe, is the new board assistant that probably needs to be pulled over.
I've unmuted it up. What's her name?
Do we have an introduction? 714, please.
Unless it's 601B.
172 is the last three numbers.
I don't know. They noticed,
Oh,
I
it's two.
think it's 601B. Because they noticed.
172.
Yeah, this is Ara Campbell, the
Oh,
board
it's-
assistant for Chairman Don Wagner.
Great. Welcome, Ms. Campbell.
Oh.
All right, let's see. Mike Miller's with us. I see Deb and Mark. Great. I also believe Jason Lowe said he would also be coming in on the web.
Again, it's 601B.
Oh, they did.
Cynthia. Robin. Christine.
I can 601B. That's
Okay.
Okay, great. We got Jason. Okay. All right, great. Take two. All right. So FYI, Wayne and Sarah and the crew out in China are still there. Erica, you're stuck with me today. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started?
Mike?
Yes.
Maybe
Any
for
comments?
our new board, for Tara. Welcome, Tara. This is Debbie Mendelson from Mayor McAllen's office. I was thinking maybe you could, Mike, let her know which board assistants are here since she's on the phone and can't see us.
That's a great idea, Deb. Why don't we go ahead and do that?
I can actually see you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Next time I'll be able to figure out how you can see me.
No problem, Tara. But while we're at it, I like that suggestion. So Deb, why don't we start with you and introduce yourself and your representative?
Well, I just did. Hi, Tara. I'm Debbie, and I am one of two board assistants for Mayor McAllen, cities of San Bernardino County.
Great. Mr. Mark.
Mark Taylor. I'm the board assistant for Councilmember Carlos Rodriguez, and we met previous. Welcome.
Great. Michael.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Miller with Board Assistant for Supervisor Kurt Hagman.
Right. Welcome, guys. Okay, so in the room here, we'll start with Fred.
Hi, I'm Fred Minassian. I'm a board assistant for Veronica Padilla Campos.
Ron Ketchum, I met Tara last meeting, and I work for Larry McAllen.
Great. Tom.
Tom Gross, board assistant, board consultant for Mayor Patricia Locke Dawson.
Lorraine.
Lorraine Lundquist. I'm with Supervisor Holly Mitchell.
Ben.
I'm Ben Wong, board consultant to Vice Chair Michael Cacchiotti, who represents 34 cities in eastern Los Angeles County.
Great. Bill.
Bill Kelly, I'm also a consultant, Michael Cacchiotti.
And Great.
Uh,
And Andrew?
Andy Silva, consultant for Riverside Mayor Lock Dawson.
Awesome. So Tara, those are your colleagues here in the Board of Citizens briefing room. And while we have it here, let's go ahead and introduce Barbara.
Good morning, Tara. My name is Barbara Beard. I'm Chief Deputy Counsel in the Legal Division. More often, you'll be seeing my boss, Bay Gilchrist, who seminar today. And I have a question for you. Are you located at the County Administration Center?
In
I
Santa
am.
Ana?
Okay, great.
I
Just wanted to make sure your location was noticed. Okay, thank you. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you all.
We also have Ken Chalkins.
He didn't notice the location.
He did not notice.
Oh, well,
Okay,
then he
but-
can't participate. He can watch.
Listen in. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ron.
Great. Thank you, Ron.
And Michael, just
Yes.
so we start off quickly, it is Tara. I know it's
Oh.
Tara. She would prefer that. there's two.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies. Thank you. Great.
Kind of you, Mark, and I will respond to whatever you guys call me, but yes, my parents chose Tara.
All right, sounds good. The font is very screened from where I'm at, and I'm getting quite old, so I can't see. We do have other folks here from the agency, but we'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves when their subject comes up as an agenda item issue. My name is Mike Kraus-Tarr. I'm an Assistant Deputy Executive Officer in our Planning and Rules Division. So once again, welcome. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here on the agenda. Our first agenda item is to review our upcoming board meeting on October 4th. So I believe everyone probably has a copy of the agenda that we're proposing to present to the board on October. That sort of seems to be the standard process by which we present things. We'll kind of jump right to the back of the agenda, which is where the public hearings are at, starting off with agenda item number 22. This item deals with the amendments for our Rule 1135. 1135, as a reminder, regulates nitrogen oxide emissions at electric generating facilities. This particular amendment focuses on one EGF, or one electric generating facility, located on Catalina Island. Back in 2022, the board directed staff to take a further look at of how we're regulating that particular facility. Just by way of background, we created basically a emissions cap glide path for that facility out there. Giving them levels of flexibility by which they can operate and upgrade their facility, but also to meet a certain emissions cap. What our direction was to kind of go back and see if there were opportunities to see whether we can go even further than what that cap was already approved in the rule. Just a reminder that our cap was at 13 tons per year. Upon a lot of work with that analysis, site visits, things like that, looking at all sorts of technologies, which you can find in the staff report that we looked at, working with Edison. There was a grid stability study that was done. It's 1,000 pages, all available online, and lots of stakeholder meeting and input. It was decided that we could further ratchet down that cap to a further number at 6 tons per year by using a variety of different technologies, including zero emission technologies. And of course, the bigger issue is ensuring feasibility. So we went through that whole process. And so our proposal is to not only have this new end cap of 6 tons per year, which basically translates to 90% reductions in nitrogen oxide emissions from the current levels that are at the facility, but also to introduce an interim limit. This enables us to give basically what we would call increments of progress to ensure that the facility, in good intention in meeting these future facility caps, are doing it in incremental progress in the interim. So having them meet an interim cap. There were also 2 other provisions by which we sort of were encouraged by. One would be that after the initial installation of Tier 4 diesel engines, replacing very old engines, I think we presented this before, whereby some of the engines are back in the 50s and 60s that were installed out there on the island, to convert those or replace those, with Tier 4 engines. Just by doing the Tier 4 engines in itself will give us a 60% reduction in NOx emissions. So a real good story there. And then in addition, we decided after that point, no more diesel could be installed and operated then at the facility. The other thing we're looking at is what we call legacy engines. There are 3 much older engines that after all this process happens, they'll still be out there on the island, and we have a provision now to phase those off the island as well. So lots of exciting, I think, news on the front with 1135, and that's what we'll be proposing on our public hearing. Does have any questions? Yes, Andrew.
So if I restate this in 3 or 4 sentences, then the 3 Tier 4s are going to be brought online
Correct,
And that's a 60% reduction right there.
correct.
And then they'll have to identify solar or linear generators or
In order to meet the
Whatever.
lower, emission
as
caps in the
they
future.
move down.
That's right.
Okay. And you said that they're looking at solar, some?
30% solar.
Okay. With
Yeah.
battery
Just
storage, I
expense per-
imagine?
It's that's right. That's correct. Solar battery. Yeah. Storage.
And then somebody mentioned that wind is not good out there? Wind isn't a good option?
Well, again, we're proposing caps. What they want to do is, up to them to meet those. Yeah.
So those caps at some point bring them at par with facilities here, their emissions?
It's still high emitting. I mean, the fact that understandably that this is the one facility that powers the whole island and not just electricity, right?
I know,
It's
but-
water and stuff. So I think
You're eliminating the diesel generators, you said at some point.
correct.
What will be the?
Well,
it will be high.
diesel will still be part of the profile, just a much less than what it is currently at. So yes.
Okay.
And they'll be the cleanest at the tier 4.
They're eliminating new diesels, but they're leaving free replacement. Is it
Correct.
right?
That's right.
Free replacement
All
diesels.
the existing ones will go. So
And one of
it'll be
those,
just as standard wise, it'll be just as tight. Yes.
Any guesswork on how much those emissions go into San Diego County?
Yeah.
That's, it's right across from the border of San Diego County and Orange County, so some of that stuff may be going into, no sense of how much, what percent?
Yeah. I don't have that information.
Michael, remind me the date of the glide path, when they have to get down to 6?
So, yeah, so it's kind of, I have a lot of dates in my head. Okay, so the first, thank you.
I didn't have any, which is why I asked.
Yeah, we want to go to the weeds, that's fine. No, so we're looking at a glide path at 45, 30, 13, and then down to 6. The 6 will ultimately be at 2035. We set some of those dates up wise based upon realistic schedules. We do recognize that they need to come in for permits. They're going to have to comply with CEQA. There'll be other levels of approval like EPA that'll need to be done. We'll have to, of course, get the equipment in some cases, those installed, et cetera. There's other approval processes. So we kind of took that into account.
so a random technical question. Since this is a pretty easy agenda, how does a linear generator work? It's not combustion, but it's some kind of
Mike, you want to
chemical
introduce yourself though,
reaction
just in
that
case?
pushes the piston.
So I'm Mike Morris, Planning Rules Manager. I worked on the linear generator rule 1110.3. So linear generator basically introduces a gas into a chamber where it isn't combusted. There's a reaction and that drives a piston in some cases, basically back and forth across an air chamber. And at that point, they add, it goes across the coils and that's where it generates electricity. Yes. There's a couple of different styles of it. We had one company that was kind of active in our rule development. There's another company that's recently come on board that is now providing linear generators for vehicles, recharging trucks and things like that out there as well. So
Very cool.
yeah.
So how do you get that initial compression?
It's
like if the engine has a starter, it
Yeah.
gets the compression going.
Yeah, so
You
there
need something
is-
to get it started.
Yeah, there is a need for a fuel in that case, and so that's how they do get it started. Now, the fuel that they utilize generally is natural gas right now. On an island like Catalina, they would use propane, but it also can use hydrogen, ammonia, and other things that would not contribute to greenhouse gas emissions.
If you have fuel and you have high pressure, how come it's not combustion?
That's a great question, and a lot of people challenge us on that. It's mostly temperature. It is, and reaction is occurring at a lower temperature. And therefore, without controls, without NOx controls, they operate around 2.5 parts per million NOx. without having to have any added controls on it. That's what separates them from engines. Though technically it is an engine.
All right, so now we've gone through our physics and magnetic energy class. Thank you very much, Andrew. Really appreciate that.
Make everyone's head hurt.
I love it. We talk about different things here at the Board Assistance Briefing. All right, so why don't we move on to our agenda item number 23. This is with regards to the Coachella Valley Attainment Plan for our 2008 8-hour ozone standard. Dr. Lee, and if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sing-Mi Lee. I'm Planning and Rules Manager overseeing AQMD City Development Modeling and Emissions Inventory. So this item is Coachella Valley Attainment Plan for 2008 8-hour ozone standard. So Coachella Valley is currently extreme non-attainment area for this standard. The valley was reclassified as extreme to resolve challenges associated with motor vehicle emissions budget. So it's reclassified last year and set 2031 as a new attainment year. And then we have to submit SIP planning requirements to EPA, including attainment demonstration, emissions inventory, and then reasonable progress demonstration, etc. So this plan introduced attainment strategy that is continued implementation of already adopted rules and regulations. Since Coachella Valley has much better ozone quality than South Coast Air Basin, so NOx reductions from already adopted rules and regulations turns out to be sufficient for the valley to meet the standard by 2031. So this plan was developed with public participation. So we hosted a public consultation meeting in August with the Mobile Source Committee in August, and then the plan was released for public review and comment for 30 days. No significant public comment has been received. So that concludes my briefing for this item.
Great. All right, any other questions on the Coachella Valley?
What do you expect Coachella to meet the 0.084 standard?
Oh, that's an excellent, 84 ppb. That's right. Yes, that's excellent question. So Coachella, the attainment due date was June this year, but then Coachella is actually very, very close to meeting the standard. This year's concentration, if we exclude 2 days that was influenced by wildfire, it is 83 ppb. But we need 1 year more till next year to demonstrate the attainment. So we are currently in a process to request 1 year extension.
So next year.
Yeah. So we are in very good shape.
No wildfires for a year. Okay.
They exclude
Good luck with
wildfire.
that.
Hope so.
So far, we were doing very good. There was 3 wildfires in the basin, didn't really affect Coachella Valley or something.
But you do exclude wildfire days, right?
So it was 2 days, 2023, that was, there was big 3 fires in the basin near the San Gabriel Mountains. And then those has affected the Coachella Valley. So ozone levels were like 87 ppb, 86 ppb level, but there is a clear evidence those were influenced by wildfire. So we had this gigantic exceptional event demonstration, and it is currently under public review. It is available on our website, and then it's LEP and CAR concurrently reviewing.
So we do exclude those if they're regulatorily significant, because it's a real effort to go through the exercise.
I see.
Okay.
Question, appreciate it.
Exceptional events. All right. I find every day is an exceptional event, but maybe that's just my life. Okay, if we can move on now back to the beginning of our agenda for our October board meeting. Obviously, we'll have minutes, and then we'll move on to our 2 set hearings. The first one is on our amendments to our Rule 1151. And Heather, if you'd like to give a little.
Good morning, Heather Carr. I'm a planning and rules manager overseeing several rules team, including the team that is working on this rule. So Rule 1151 is the rule that sets VOC limits on automotive coatings. A lot of the manufacturers have achieved those low VOC limits through the use of exempt solvents. These are solvents that are not photochemically reactive, so they don't lead to ground level ozone. Manufacturers have successfully used these to reformulate and lower the VOC. However, some recent assessments from the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment has found them to have toxic endpoints They are pretty potent carcinogens. So we're now proposing to phase out of those chemicals. So Rule 1151 for auto body shops, we have many of them in our jurisdiction, about 3,000 auto body shops, and they're really in communities. So we're trying to do our best to phase out of this as quickly as we can. So to do that, we're going to actually raise VOC limits temporarily to allow coatings that are sold in the national market to come into our jurisdiction. That will allow a pretty quick transition out of the PCBTF coatings. And then we're establishing future effective limits in like 2028, 2030 to give time for the manufacturers to reformulate back down to lower levels. On full implementation, we'll actually have lower VOC emissions from these coatings than we have today. So it is really a success story. We're also adding into the rules some reporting requirements so we can kind of monitor how those sales are going. Any questions?
Great. Yes.
TBAC or PCBTF, 6 to 7 times more cancer than the TBAC. So just a curious question, is there a minimum in regard to carcinogenics that we wouldn't be passing a rule on?
So we did some studies in the past when we were asked. So I should have mentioned the two chemicals, by the way. That's tertiary butyl acetate or TBAC and perachlorobenzoyl trifluoride or PCBTF. And we did studies for TBAC. We only have limited exemptions because when we were looking at it, there was already some toxicity concerns. There were already some studies that indicated there were concerns. So we did do modeling to try to see if there were any sort of applications that maybe it could be okay. Like we looked at roofing adhesives to see what the impact would be on a neighboring house if you're doing a roofing project. And we really didn't find any application where we thought that there could be safe levels of exposure.
One last question. What's with EPA? How come they hid that fact? And I went and I looked and saw a bunch of journals that said that the EPA basically told their people, do not release the fact that this is a cancerous substance. Did you follow that at all?
Yeah, I don't know if we could speak on behalf of EPA.
No, but I'm just wondering, what do you think would go into their head that they would do that?
Mental illness.
Yeah, I don't think we could speak on behalf.
Consider toxicity when they look at a
Yeah.
exempt compound, they're just looking at the photochemical reactivity. So if it's below a certain level, it's just considered an exempt because it's not photochemically reactive. And then it's kind of up to the air districts that adopt these to determine if we want.
It seemed like our state agency were willing to go out and say this is a cancerous thing, and the EPA was fighting it tooth and nail and not releasing their own information, because that only affects California. But how about Michigan and those other places that have major, I mean, they may have a huge problem with toxic things. So I don't know what the feds are doing with that.
Just a little footnote, Ron, on the question of like the allowable risk. So a lot of these auto body shops do go into our engineering department for permits, and they are held then to our 1401 rule. And then, of course, as you know, there are risk limits. Okay. Any more questions for Heather on 1151? Okay, let's move on to the next.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, Deb. Sorry.
Just a quick question. I know this is going to come before the Stationary Source Committee in October. And we've received, and I think everybody's received some letters like from the UV industry and the coatings industry, and they've got some issues in language that they've brought forward as well. So will you be prepared at the Stationary Source Committee to respond to some of those letters so that we can see where the discussions are going? And,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And when will we see because we haven't seen, of course, the final rule language either, right?
Right. So you want to touch on the 30-day package?
Yeah, our draft, the 30-day draft package will be released next Tuesday. So October 1st is our date. It's a little off because we didn't have a September stationary. We usually go to stationary before we release those draft documents, but we will discuss it and we can have a slide in there on the key issues, including the concerns from the EV coatings manufacturers.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Deb. And thank you, Heather. Okay. I don't see any more hands raised. I do see we have a new, is that Peter? Okay. All right, very good. We'll move on to our next set hearing item, which is our amendments to our Rule 1173. Mr. Mike.
Hello, everybody. Mike Morris again. So Rule 1173 regulates fugitive emissions from valves, flanges, pumps and other components located at petroleum refineries, chemical plants, oil and gas production, and other petroleum or VOC related activities. As part of the Wilmington, Carson, West Long Beach Community Emission Reduction Plan, or CERP, they did request that we look at fugitive emissions at these types of facilities and see what we could do in terms of addressing those fugitive emissions. So with 1173, we are going to lower the leak standards that are currently in the rule from 500 to 100 for about 90% of the 2.6 million components that are subject to the rule. We are also requiring optical gas imaging on a monthly basis to capture these leaks more quickly, at least the larger leaks. We are also including contingency measures in the rule. With all of these provisions, we're expecting about 2 tons per day of VOC reductions from these facilities. The cost effectiveness is about $18,000 per ton of VOC reduced. There were 2 key issues that were raised during Stationary Source Committee. The first was the delay of repair for these. As we lower the leak standard, there is a concern that we might be asking them to shut down equipment that would create even more emissions than just fixing the leak. And so for that interim period between 500 ppm, where the current standard is, and 100 ppm, for a small number of components, basically 0.05% of those 2.6 million components, they can do a delay of repair and wait until the next shutdown occurs to repair those leaks. We also are clarifying for fin fan plugs, which are these heat exchangers operating at the facilities, that they are also subject to the rule. They are limited to 500 ppm leak standard, and they also require a delay of repair because those fin fan plugs are usually under pressure and high temperature, so it might not be safe to actually repair those easily. So their delay of repair standard is actually higher. It's at 5,000 ppm, where they'd be able to wait for a small percentage of those to be repaired when they can do it safely. And we believe we've covered the key issues of that rule, and that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any questions about 1173?
I, of course, have a question. I'm curious about if these leaks have any impact on those EJ communities. I wouldn't think that they have any direct impact. Do they?
So they
have
are
an
located within the EJ community of Wilmington, Carson, West Long Beach for the most part. And so those emissions do go into the air surrounding those communities. And that is a concern of those communities directly.
Right. So keep in mind, these are components not just at petroleum refineries and chemical plants, but also places like an oil and gas production field. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Okay. If we can move on then to our next agenda item, number 3. It looks like we have both 3, 4, and 5 being presented by Dr. Lowe. Jason, if you could introduce yourself so Tara knows who you are, would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mike, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Lowe. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for the Monitoring Analysis Division. And item 3, speaking of oil and gas, this action is to support the implementation of the amended Rule 1180 and the adopted Rule 1180.1, which requires oil refineries, related facilities, and other refineries to fund the installation and operation of fenceland and community air monitoring systems. The actions here are to recognize the revenue of about $7.5 million for Rule 1180 and 1180.1 into the Rule 1180 Special Revenue Fund, transfer and appropriate up to almost $1.5 million into the monitoring analysis budget, issue purchase orders for air monitoring shelters and vehicles, and add new positions for the planning and implementation of the enhanced and additional community air monitoring. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Great.
What are they monitoring for?
So there's a lot of compounds that they're measuring for, several air toxics. Some of the newer compounds under 1180.1 include some of the metals. and PM2.5. So other compounds include ammonia, black carbon, and hydrogen sulfide.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions on agenda item number 3? Okay, Jason, if you're okay with it, we can move on to our next one then, dealing with an air monitoring shelter.
Yep, this one's a pretty straightforward item. So South Coast AQMD previously received a federal grant award from the US EPA under the Inflation Reduction Act. This action is to recognize the remaining balance of around $100,000 and appropriate these funds into the Monitoring Analysis Division budget and issue a solicitation and purchase order for our air monitoring shelter. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Where is this shelter?
So this shelter is for one of our air monitoring stations. I don't know specifically. We are in the process of relocating a couple of our air monitoring stations. One in Santa Clarita is right now first and foremost on the mind, but it could be with any of the other air monitoring stations that need replacement.
I just remember way back in the day, people complained about the shipping container at Lake Arrowhead. This is not that one.
So there was an issue, I think that was in Glendora, and that one we've been able to upgrade recently.
Are they relocating a couple air monitoring stations? Which ones did you say?
So a lot of times, like, for example, right now, Santa Clarita is one where the city yard is doing construction in the area. So we have to work through a process in coordination with the EPA, and then also do some measurements to make sure that wherever we move to is roughly equivalent from a regional air quality perspective. So in this case, Santa Clarita, the city yard can move us over on a different side of their property. So we're able to just move it, essentially a few hundred meters and be able to replace the shelter that was there.
Great. Any more? Okay. Thank you, Jason. Move on to number 5. Let's talk about equipment now.
Sure. So item number 5. So South Coast AQMD, through the fiscal year process for 24-25 annual budget, approved the purchase of air monitoring and laboratory equipment. And this action is to essentially issue solicitations and purchase orders for an estimated amount of $320,000. And that includes a whole bunch of different equipment for the laboratory and air monitoring stations.
Busy there in the monitoring division for sure. And that's why it has its initials. Okay. Any other questions for Jason while we have him here on monitoring? All right. Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Much appreciated. We'll move on to our agenda item number 6. Dr. Sessaher Johnson. Sessa, do we have you online here? I believe we do. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, we have a few new folks.
Well, hi, my name is Dr. Sessaher Johnson. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion with Community Air Programs.
Great. And Sessa, are you going to address the your agenda item number 6 with regards to the air filtration systems in Eastern Coachella Valley? We're looking to.
My apologies. I'm looking for the document and I can't find it.
Not a problem. So it seems that US EPA did award us a grant on this in this regard, and we're looking to implement that for air filtration. So I think it sounds all very positive. So any specific questions or concerns we can?
So is this just a training program for how to do or maintain air filtration?
It does seem like that. I proposed to spend the remaining, partly a training, right? Partly to improve the whole system itself.
That's not a lot of money. So.
Yeah.
So is $45,000 going to fund outreach programs, Sessa, or is it going to fund filtration systems?
It was my understanding that it's going to be, this is Susan, it's not Cora. It was my understanding that the SEDCA program, that they did the community outreach and education with that group. And then this is leftover money from that program that they're going to allocate towards air filtration systems.
So I can also, sorry, I can speak to it. Sorry, thank you. Thanks, Susan. You're correct. So it's additional outreach funding and training for people within the community. So it is absolutely that, Deborah. Yes.
Great.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused. So it's for both. It's for the training and for the systems themselves?
That is correct. Yes.
And how many systems does that fund?
I could not speak to that. Hold on one second. I can get back with you in a short minute.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And for TAR's edification, Susan Nakamura is our Chief Operating Officer here at the South Coast AQMD. Also, is very knowledgeable, so.
She's up in the room.
She's there.
Okay, well, Deb, we get back to that. Why don't we go ahead and move on to our agenda item number 7. Ron, are you prepared to
Yes.
speak on that?
I'm Ron Moskowitz. I am the Deputy Executive Officer and Chief Information Officer, responsible for all the information management IT stuff in the district. And this action is to obtain approval for the purchase of an Esri Enterprise agreement for a period of 3 years at an amount not to exceed $185,000 a year. Funds for the first year purchase are included in my budget, and the funds for subsequent years will be included in future budget requests. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions for Ron on agenda item number 7? Okay. If we can, I noticed Cynthia up there waiting patiently for agenda item number 8. Cynthia, if you don't mind, go ahead and introducing yourself to the group. That would be great.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Cynthia Ravenstein. I'm the contracts administrator for the MSRC, which is the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee. And the MSRC led an RFP for programmatic outreach services. And they we're looking for someone to help provide outreach in support of their programs. And they selected Better World Group to provide the outreach and awarded a contract to them. So I would be happy to address any questions.
Cost?
$300,000 for the initial 3-year period, with an option to come back for a 2-year period. That would be considered again at that time.
Okay. Any other questions for Cynthia? Okay, then let's circle back to Dr. Herb Johnson. Seth, I saw you had your hand raised.
Thank you very much. It is 15 units, Deborah, and if more, depending on the cost. We're definitely working on seeing if we do, but it's for 15 units.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you for that, Seth. Appreciate that information. That's good. That sounds good. Any system's good system. So, okay. Then we're going to move on to our next grouping here. This is the receive and file agenda items. Let's see. We're going from 9 through 15. Let's group those up. Does anyone have any specific questions? And Mr. Mark, did you get the latest version that I know you're going to be asking for?
I have not seen it.
Are you going to ask the question, or should I just go ahead and answer?
You know what the question is. I just if there's any update that we should just be aware of related to the rule forecast report.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Yes, so we have some more adjustments. Of course, as you can imagine, we're coming down toward the end of the year, and some of these projects now will find themselves being moved into the new year, such as the port ISR rule, our work on our reclaim and our NSR world. That's going to be moving into 2025, going to the board. We're also proposing to move for right now 1445. That's our rule focused on laser and plasma arc metal cutting. There's some issues some of the stakeholders have raised and some questions that staff is working to respond to, and we just want to make sure we have proper time to provide that response and possibly make any possible changes with the rule. Just haven't decided yet.
I just wanted to note, just for the record, that for 1445, the agenda that was presented to the admin committee did have 1445 as a set hearing, but we removed it from the set hearing because we wanted more time to do the testing.
Okay.
Great. Good point. Thank you, Susan, for that. That's really critical information. So if you guys could just take that back to your folks, we'd appreciate it.
So ports is not December, it's pushed back?
Yeah, we're pushing that to first quarter next year.
Okay.
Okay. And of course, with any of these, you can sign up on our sign up page if you're interested in being part of our mailing list for any of these rules and continue to get updates on our progress. Did I hear somebody on the screen? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tara here. So kind
Yeah.
of on that item 13 and on that with the rule changes, is it possible to get a list of permit holders that would be affected by these rules? These changes in our county?
Any particular rule you would have in mind on that?
The ones that you just mentioned, since we don't see the report just yet.
Mike, do you want to just give a little update on like what's in the rule forecast report? This is the first time she's seen it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
I just see the ones that I don't see the report, but it sounds like Mark asks regularly about this item.
Yes, I do.
Right. Yeah. So the rule forecast calendar basically sets the stage of those various rules, and then at times, even though we've tried to target to meet those dates to bring the rule amendments or adoption of a new rule to the board, sometimes we're needing extra time for that, so we do delay those. We do alert our stakeholders on all of that. So typically, the stakeholders are a list of those folks that are that are either affected or interested in that particular rule. But if you would want to know the universe of some of these other ones, we can talk offline and provide that.
Yeah, I'll wait to see the item and then probably talk with you offline to see what it kind of looks like for at least in our county. And then I had a question on item 11, which is the civil penalties. So all of these are obviously settled. But do we get notified or informed when a notice of violation is issued in Orange County? Like, do you guys send that to us?
So Mike, I can answer that. So every month we send out an email to each city where if we issue a notice of violation, we'll send it to the city manager and they get an update on that. Those are the only ones we send out a notice to.
Okay. And so if it was unincorporated, it would come to us at the county and sent to the CEO, or?
So if it's unincorporated, it'll go to the county. So in Orange County, unincorporated parts of, Tustin, and other unincorporated parts, they will get it. The county CEO will get it, but if it's within a city jurisdiction, the city manager will get it.
Gotcha. Because obviously on this report, it doesn't list even we're not sure the location of these, so not sure which ones are in Orange County. So, all right, I'll take a longer look at it. Obviously, new kid on the block, seeing how this all shakes out. So thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, Tar. Appreciate that. And we now move on to the items there with the committee items. I noticed that Susan highlighted about the admin, the change there when it comes to 1445. Is there any other questions that one might have on items 16 through 20?
Yeah, I have a question on the legislative committee. At the legislative committee, it was presented that there's a new legislation, AB 98, that was passed in 3 days, got an amendment, went through the Senate and the Assembly, and it's on governor's desk for signature. And that's affecting our warehouse RSR and WARE program very negatively. Just wanted to see if there's any updates since the legislative committee and where it stands.
Derek, did you have anything to weigh in on 98?
Yeah, Fred hasn't been signed yet by the governor. At least last time I checked, I don't know if anybody else from my group is on, but I don't believe it's been signed yet. We do have a veto, a letter to veto it to the governor. So that's the latest.
I looked it up last night and I didn't see any update. It didn't look like he signed it or vetoed it yet. So I've been kind of watching.
I'm sorry. Could you explain it briefly? Just summarize the legislation briefly.
So kind of what Fred was saying is it mandates, there's a lot of different parts to it, but how it affects AQMD is it mandates us to look at how our WARE program fees are being used, but additionally requires us to do some additional monitoring at warehouses, some mobile monitoring, but that's there's going to be, I believe, a cleanup bill in the upcoming legislative session to clean up and make it more specific on exactly what we have to do. We're going to try to work with them. If it does get signed by the governor, we're going to try to work with the authors to whittle down some of the requirements that we have.
And Derek, isn't it true the governor only has until September 30th to sign this bill?
He has until he can do, yes, you're correct. He can either sign, veto, or don't do anything. If he doesn't do anything, then it becomes law.
So if he doesn't do anything, it becomes law?
Yes.
And so say if it becomes law or he signs it, does the, before we do the cleanup, the warehouse ISR basically cannot be implemented? How does that affect?
No, I think this stuff gets implemented. Part of it gets implemented in January of 25 and other parts come later on. I'm not sure where they're at, but I don't think it really affects us right now collecting the fees.
Derek, can I weigh in on this one? So it doesn't really affect the rule. What it would do is affect how penalty funds could be spent, and it requires additional public process on any penalties. But as far as implementation of the rule itself, it shouldn't have any effect on the implementation of the rule. But it does, as Derek mentioned, have a lot of other requirements related to imposing monitoring and modeling analysis on this.
And significant impact on local municipalities and fines that can be assessed.
I think it would be a good idea if at the board meeting, because not all the board members are at the legislative committee. I informed my board member about this. If just an update, a short update can be given at the board meeting, whether it's signed or not or whatever.
Yeah, Fred, at the board meeting, yeah, we'll update you if it is signed, I'm sure. So you'll bring it up, or I'm sorry, your boss will bring it up, or someone else will bring it up. Because it is kind of intrusive on what we do and what cities do, what they're required to do. It's a lot of money that they're unfunded mandates.
Thank you.
Andrew, can we drop to Michael on the screen real quick? Because he had his hand raised.
Hi, sorry, yeah, I had a quick question for you, Derek. Just a kind of a process one. You said you guys had a letter to veto on the governor, or planning to send a letter to veto to the governor. What is the process usually around that? Like if the agency is going to send a letter, does that go through the legislative committee? Does that just go through Wayne? What's kind of the process?
So when there's bills that are introduced, if we want to take a position on it, we can take a position on it, and we go based on what the board votes on, whatever position they want to take on it. We make a recommendation. Admin or ledge committee will either go with it or make us adjust it, or
Yes,
whatever. Right.
Totally get that if we align on one, but like, say it's a bill that we're just watching, right? And then ultimately it comes down, staff thinks it's language comes out as not great for the agency. No official position was taken. Would you just call a special meeting of the ledge committee, or would you just talk to the chair?
So a couple things, we would take a look at our guiding principles to see if it falls under the guiding principles, and it kind of gives us a blanket authority. But AB 98, we took it to committee as an example to get direction, and we got direction on it, and we discussed it.
Yeah, I was just asking more in a general, making sure I understood the process.
Sometimes, we don't need to take it to committee because it falls under our guiding principles. But if it's a controversial bill, we take it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And
the bill sets setback standards and renewable energy standards for warehouses and all that. This bill is just, everyone hates this bill. Everyone. Enviros hate it because it's not strict enough. Just local, especially in the Inland Empire, where we have the biggest warehouse issue. Local jurisdictions see this as, once again, Sacramento needing to tell us Inland Empire, Neanderthal, knuckle draggers, how to take care of our own business. So
Yeah,
enviros hate it because it's not strict enough. Local jurisdictions hate it because it's Sacramento dictating land use to local jurisdictions again.
it's more than just Inland Empire. It's the high desert, Juan Korea high desert, Palmdale area. So they're starting to build warehouses out there. So it's not just the IE. This is across the state.
Okay. Any more comments? All right. So I think that wraps up our agenda for the October board meeting. If we want to move on to the next agenda item.
I think there's public comment.
Public comment. Yes, thank you. Sorry. Go ahead. Ron? Yeah, Harvey. All right. Harvey.
Good morning. Am I being heard?
You sure are.
Okay, first of all, on every item, you're required to ask for public comment from the public, and you neglected to do that. Everything that was done here is illegal, violation of the Brown Act. Okay? Board assistants, my name is Harvey Etter. I'm the founder and director of the Public Solar Power Coalition. Been around 40, 50 years. Okay, so there's a lot of changes. I hear whispering going on. Okay, look, there's a lot of changes going on now. There's a federal plan coming in with contingency measures and all this because we haven't met requirements for half a century. And basically, there's a cover-up. PM 2.5 kills 80–90% of the people, and the state and the districts use very low numbers, 7,500 deaths a year. Okay, i.e., the Harvard used 350,000 deaths for the whole country from air pollution, and we're 12% of the population, about 50,000 proportion. There's a study by Lancet. Lancet journal's been around 200 years out of London, and they say there's 1.1 to 1.5 million premature deaths for the country each year from air emissions. All right, based on 10 million. The Harvard study was based on 7 million. This is pushing fossil fuels and natural gases that this agency's been doing in this state is killing people, murdering people, and this is a cover-up. And this is a captured agency, and that's on the agenda. There's meetings on Stigler. I got a Nobel in economics in 81 for captured agencies and equities initiative. Stiglitz and ran the World Bank, and incorporating his book by reference on equity, threat to democracy. That's what's up now. Okay. And also, all the comments we made about the Republicans, they're not a party. They do not accept it.
Mr. Adler, this is not on the agenda.
All right, if we could just stick to the agenda for the October board meeting would be great. Harvey, you still there?
And just for the board assistants, we do have agenda item number 1 is all one agenda item, which is the discussion of the board meeting. So I don't believe he's correct that there's a Brown Act violation.
Yeah, Rita move.
Okay, let's go ahead and switch gears to Rita. Rita, go ahead.
Good morning. Rita Louv, Director of Environmental Affairs for RADTech International. And my comments are related to item 2A on the board agenda, which is Rule 1151 for automotive coatings. We submitted public comments to staff on this. Our materials are not formulated with the 2 substances that were mentioned by Heather, TBAC or PCBTF. And they're typically well below 50 grams per liter in VOC content, which is minimal compared to some of the proposed limits that are as high as 840 grams per liter. While it may make regulatory sense to scrutinize high VOC materials, it simply does not make sense to subject companies who are investing in clean air technology to the same level of scrutiny. In keeping with past district policies and direction from the governing board, we respectfully request that UV LED materials be exempted from the rule requirements related to record keeping. We're already well in compliance with the rest of the rule. We're only challenging the record keeping requirements because they're really burdensome on our businesses. So we strongly oppose the new additional requirements for reporting, record keeping, labeling in the most recent 1151 proposal. We already have a record keeping rule, Rule 109, and our materials are already covered in that rule. So I really do not understand why we would subject our industry to these burdensome additional requirements. But I guess I do understand why, because that has been the district's perspective for many, many years. I've been dealing with the district on behalf of RADTech for 30 years. And before that, I was an air quality management engineer with the district. And I had meetings with engineering, the engineering management, and I would ask Fred Lettuce, Fred, would you rather have records or clean the air? And he would tell me, I'd rather have records. So I understand that this is baked into how the district thinks, but I would hope that cooler heads would prevail and that we could give some regulatory flexibility here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rita. Appreciate the comments. Do you have anyone else? Ron, online there. Okay. That. Oh, sorry. Great. And as Barbara said, that was the first agenda item, and that's why we opened it up to public comments after that first agenda item. So we'll now move on to the second agenda item of other business. If you guys have any other business you'd like to bring up. Yes, Andrew.
I can make my monthly reading recommendation. Warehouses.
Book club.
This just came out. It's How the World Ran Out of Everything. It's not an air quality book, but it's trucks, trains, ships. It just came out a couple of months ago, and it's really interesting about how the whole supply chain works and what happened during the pandemic. And the one cool thing, he weaves through the story this one engineer who came up with this little tchotchke that lights up when it gets wet. And he had his first big order from Sesame Street. So it's like one container. He has to find a factory in China to build it, and then the fecal material hits the air circulation device, and then he has to find a container, and then you got to find a ship, and you got to find a port, and then you got to get the container into port after it sits off Long Beach for a couple of weeks. And anyway, it's just sort of the adventures he went through trying to get this one box that was critical to his company from China to Mississippi while everyone's worried about toilet paper and respirators. And anyway, I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but it's a.
Okay, so you can't tell us if it's a happy ending or not.
Yeah, not yet. I'm only halfway through it. But for all of us who deal with warehouses and logistics, it's pretty interesting. Like How the World Ran Out of Everything just came out a couple of months ago.
Thank you for that. I'm writing it down. I'm a big reader. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Anyone else for other business? Okay, and Deb, I saw some hands move, or are we just thumbs up, you ready for lunch? Okay, and then
actually one quick question.
Yes,
Barbara, is there anticipated to be a closed session or a long closed session, or any knowledge on that?
Best to my knowledge, we would be having closed session on labor negotiations, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay, it's just time management for the board member. He asked, if there's going to be a long. Okay.
Great. Thanks for the question, Mark. Get that answered. And then number 3, public comments. So if we want to now open up to public comment, of course, it's public comment for any items that were currently not on the agenda. Ron, how are we looking? Okay. Any other final comments before we adjourn? All right. Thank you all very much. Hope you have productive rest of the week. We'll see you next Friday.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Deb.
I'll park in front of.
Nice meeting you, Tar.
Nice to meet you guys.
Bet. I was about to say